I had not planned on going to that wedding, not because I was busy or broke or holding some dramatic grudge that makes for a good story at a bar, but because for 5 years my family had made it painfully easy to forget they existed, and forgetting is a kind of peace you do not realize you have until somebody tries to steal it from you. I was 30, living out of a suitcase more than I lived in my own condo, flying out of Chicago midway every other week for work, sleeping in airport hotels where the carpets smell like old coffee and the curtains never quite close, and honestly, I liked it because nobody asked me what I was doing with my life while I was doing it. Then my cousin Jenna sent an invite like it was a peace offering wrapped in beige cardstock, and my first instinct was to laugh, because I had been invisible to these people for half a decade and now I was supposed to show up smiling for photos under fairy lights like nothing happened. I almost tossed it, but the weird thing about family is that even when you leave, they still live in your head like a song you hate but can sing word for word. I told myself I would go for Jenna, because she was always the quiet one who slipped me extra deviled eggs at cookouts when everyone else was busy ranking each other, and also because I wanted to prove to myself I could walk into that room and not shrink. I booked a flight to Nashville, rented a plain gray SUV, and drove out past the city until the signs turned into barns and wedding venues and those long stretches of road where you can see your own thoughts ahead of you. The night before the wedding, I sat in the hotel parking lot with the engine off, phone in my hand, and my thumb hovered over the number I had not called in years. My dad, Alan Brooks, the man who used to clap me on the shoulder so hard it felt like a shove, the man who believed love was something you earned like overtime pay, the man who made me pay rent at 15 and called it responsibility like that word could cover the bruise of it. I did not call him. I put the phone down and watched a family pile out of a minivan near the lobby, laughing like their world was safe, and I felt this old tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with anxiety and everything to do with remembering. When I was 15, my friends were worried about learner permits and homecoming pictures, and I was measuring out cash from my paycheck like a grown man, handing it to my father on the first of the month while he sat at the kitchen table like a landlord, not a parent. My mom, Diane, would stand by the sink pretending to scrub a plate that was already clean, her shoulders hunched, like if she stayed busy she could pretend she was not part of it. My older brother, Trevor, would drift through the room like he owned it, eating cereal straight from the box and smirking, because Trevor was the kind of guy who thought cruelty was charisma. Dad said, if you want to live here you pay rent. $200 a month. At 15. In a middle-class house in Indiana with a 2-car garage and a fridge full of food and a father who made enough money that we were not hurting. I worked evenings at a grocery store bagging groceries and cleaning spills and getting lectured by men who acted like asking for paper instead of plastic was a moral test. I paid because fighting him meant losing everything, and at that age your whole life is the room you sleep in. Then I turned 16 and he raised it. Then 17 and he raised it again. Every time he did it, he said a man needs pressure to become a man, and every time he said it, I felt a little more like a project than a son. The day I graduated high school, I thought the pressure would let up. It got worse. He handed me an envelope with a typed notice inside, like he had printed it at work and thought that made it official. 45 days. That was what it said. 45 days to leave. He did not even look embarrassed. Trevor laughed and said, "Guess you better learn how to mop floors somewhere else." That sentence followed me for years like a stink you cannot wash out. So when I walked into Jenna's wedding reception, the first face I saw across the room was Trevor's, and it felt like the universe had a sick sense of humor and wanted front row seats. The place was one of those rustic chic barns with chandeliers and mason jars and an open bar, and everyone looked softer than I remembered, except my brother, who still had that sharp grin like he had never paid for his own mistakes. He spotted me, raised his wine glass, and walked over with the confidence of a man who has never been told no in a way that matters. He looked me up and down like he was browsing a clearance rack. So, he said, "Loud enough for 2 cousins and 1 aunt to hear you still cleaning toilets for a living?" The old version of me would have swallowed it. The old version of me would have smiled too hard and tried to deflect with a joke. But I had spent 5 years building a life where I did not have to accept scraps, and I felt something in me settle, calm and cold, like setting a heavy box down after carrying it too far. I smiled, easy and quiet, and I pulled my key fob from my pocket, the kind with a small silver logo that people recognize even if they pretend they do not. I held it up like a coin. "Nah," I said. "I mostly travel now. My company pays me even when I sleep." Trevor's grin froze. It was not just surprise, it was offense, like the universe had broken a rule by letting me win. That look on his face was better than any apology, and that should have been the end of it. But the hook of the night, the thing that snapped my normal life in half, was not Trevor's mouth. It was my dad's hand on my shoulder from behind, heavy and familiar, and his voice in my ear like a threat wrapped in a greeting. "We need to talk," he said, and when I turned, I saw his eyes were not warm. They were hungry. Act 2 escalation of conflict. We stepped out into the cold air behind the barn, where the music dulled into a thump and the string lights made everything look nicer than it was. My dad stood with his hands in his pockets like a man trying to look casual while he measures what you are worth. He was older, sure, a little more gray around the temples, but the posture was the same, like he still believed the world owed him deference. I asked what he wanted because I had learned the hard way that with my family, love was often just a preface to a request. He did not waste time. "Your cousin told me you are doing well," he said, and then he leaned closer like he was sharing a secret. "How well are we talking?" It would have been funny if it was not so predictable. 5 years of silence. 5 years of no birthday texts, no Thanksgiving invites, no "hey, how are you?" And now suddenly my bank account had a spotlight on it. I said I am fine, and I tried to step back toward the barn, but he shifted, blocking me with that same subtle control he used when I was a kid. Trevor came out a minute later, smiling again, the way a shark looks calm in an aquarium. He leaned against the wall and said, "Dad is just curious, little brother. We miss you, Mississippi." That word felt filthy coming from him. "Dad said your mother and I have been struggling. The house needs repairs. Your mom's car is on its last legs. Your brother has been helping us, but you know how things are." Trevor gave this little sigh like he was exhausted by how hard he worked being everyone's hero, and I almost laughed because Trevor did not help people. Trevor collected favors like trophies. I told them I was not discussing money behind a barn at a wedding. Dad's jaw tightened. He did not like boundaries. He never had. Then he said it, casual, like he was talking about weather. "I heard you won." My stomach dropped because that was not something I had told Jenna, not directly, not in detail, not in a way that should have reached him. I had mentioned to her, months back, in a tired phone call after too many flights, that life had changed. I did not say how. I did not say I had bought a ticket at a gas station outside Peoria on a Thursday night in late January, and then sat in my rental car the next morning staring at numbers that matched like the universe had misread my name and rewarded the wrong man. I did not say I had won the lottery. Not the giant headline jackpot, not the kind that buys islands, but enough. Enough to erase fear. Enough to make a clean break. Enough that I could say no to people who thought no was not an option. Dad's eyes narrowed. "How much?" he asked. I told him I was not answering. Trevor laughed softly. "Come on, man," he said. "You owe Dad. You owe all of us, really. We kept a roof over your head. That roof. The roof I paid for at 15. The roof I was given 45 days to leave. The roof that came with conditions and humiliation like it was a membership club." Dad's voice sharpened. "Half," he said. I blinked. "Half of what?" I asked. "Half of the winnings," he said, like that was obviously the fair number. The air felt colder, like even the string lights above us were judging the conversation. I stared at him, and for a second I was 15 again, standing at that kitchen table with cash in my hand and shame in my throat, hearing him say a man needs pressure while my brother smirked. I felt anger. Sure, but underneath it was something else. Disbelief. Like I had spent years thinking the pain was accidental, that maybe they did not understand how much they hurt me, and now I was seeing they understood just fine, they just did not care. I told him no. Just no. One word. Clean boundary. Dad's face changed. Not sadness. Not regret. Fury. He stepped toward me. "After everything I did for you," he said, "you are going to stand there and tell me no." Trevor pushed off the wall, closing in two, and I saw it clearly then. This was not a conversation. This was a shakedown. I looked past them through the doorway where the reception glowed warm and loud, and I realized that if I went back in there, if I tried to pretend, they would follow me with this need until they hollowed me out again. So I left. I walked to my rental, got in, and drove away from the barn with the music fading behind me. And my hands were steady on the wheel even though my heart was hammering, because in that moment I knew something was coming. I did not know what shape it would take, but I knew my father did not take no like an answer. He took it like an insult. And as I drove down that dark Tennessee road, my phone lit up with a text from my mom that I had not seen in months. Call me, please. Act 3, an unexpected ally discovery. I did not call my mom that night. I drove until I hit a 24-hour diner off the highway, the kind with neon coffee signs and a tired waitress who calls you honey like she is granting you shelter. I slid into a booth with a cracked vinyl seat and ordered black coffee because I needed my brain sharp, not numb. A man in a ball cap sat in the booth across from me, older than me by maybe 15 years, with a laptop open and a legal pad covered in notes. He looked up like he recognized a certain kind of tension. Rough night, he said. I almost lied, but something about the fluorescent lights and the stale smell of fries made honesty easier. Like nobody expects you to perform in a diner at midnight. I told him the short version. Estranged family. Wedding. Demand for money. Dad wanting half. The guy nodded slowly, like he had heard this song before. I am Miles, he said. I do asset protection work. Not the shady kind. The boring kind that saves people from family tornadoes. I let out a humorless laugh and said that is exactly what this feels like. A tornado that knows my address. Miles asked if I had a lawyer. I said I had a financial advisor and an accountant, but I had not planned for this part. I had planned for quiet. He tilted his head. Do you have anything in writing from when you were a kid? He asked. Any proof he charged you rent? Any proof of the 45-day notice? It hit me like a weird flash. I did. Kept it. The notice. The envelope. The typed page. I kept it the way some people keep scars, not because they enjoy looking at them, but because they need proof they were not imagining the pain. I told Miles about it. He leaned forward and said that is not just emotional history. That is a pattern. If he is trying to claim entitlement now, you need to protect yourself with documentation and boundaries and a paper trail. Also, you need to stop talking to them directly until you have structure. I sat back, staring at my coffee. So what? I asked. I just disappear again. Miles shook his head. No, he said. You build a fence. A legal one. A communication one. You decide what you will give and what you will not, then you stick to it. And if they threaten you, you do not flinch. It was strange hearing someone say it so calmly, like this was normal, like my family's chaos was just another file folder. But it helped. It gave the situation edges, and when something has edges, you can hold it. Miles offered to connect me with an attorney he trusted in Illinois, since Chicago was my home base. He also said something that stuck. They trained you to think survival means surrender, he said. But you are 30 now. Survival can mean standing your ground. I sat there a long time watching trucks roll by outside, thinking about the kid I was who believed adulthood would magically bring respect. It did not. Adulthood just gives you choices. I drove back to my hotel near the venue at dawn, showered, and by the time the sun was up, my phone was a wildfire. Dad, Trevor, an aunt I barely remembered, cousins who had not asked about me in years suddenly sending hey buddy messages that read like warm-ups before a pitch. And then my mom called again. This time I answered because no matter how much anger I had, the idea of my mom crying alone in that house still got under my skin. Her voice cracked immediately. He is furious, she said. He says you humiliated him. He says you owe him for raising you. I kept my voice calm, because I knew if I got loud, she would retreat into apology mode and the conversation would go nowhere. Mom, I said, did you know he was going to demand money from me? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. I felt something cold wash through me. So you all knew, I said. You invited me back into the room so you could corner me. She started crying harder and said it is not like that. But she did not deny it. That was the discovery that changed the shape of it. It was not just my dad and Trevor. It was the whole system. It was the family machine that had always worked by squeezing the quiet one until he produced what they wanted. I hung up gently, not slamming the phone, because I was done giving them dramatic moments they could twist into proof I was unstable. Then I called Miles back and said connect me. By that afternoon, I was sitting in a quiet conference room in downtown Chicago on a video call with an attorney named Grace Chen, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice like a steady hand on your shoulder. She did not gasp at my story. She did not judge. She listened like it was a problem with steps. She asked about the lottery, the payout, the accounts, the communications. She asked about threats. I told her dad had not threatened yet, but he was circling. Grace said, then we assume he will. She helped me draft a formal notice that went to my father and brother, telling them all communication about finances would go through counsel, that there was no entitlement to my winnings, and that harassment would be documented. She also had me save every text, every voicemail, every message from relatives. She called it building the wall brick by brick. When I walked out of that office, the city air felt different. Not lighter, exactly, but clearer, like I was finally seeing the truth. I had not been unlucky growing up. I had been chosen as the family's pressure valve. And I was done being squeezed. Act 4, the climax. The climax did not come as a dramatic showdown in a courtroom with a judge banging a gavel. It came in the most familiar place possible, the place my father always used as his stage. My childhood home. It happened 2 weeks after the wedding, on a Saturday afternoon in early February 2026, when Chicago was doing that thing where the wind cuts through your jacket no matter how expensive it is. I had flown to Indiana because my mom texted me a simple message that felt like a trap wrapped in desperation. Please come. Just you. Your dad is out. I need to talk. I should have said no. Grace would have told me to say no. But part of me still held onto a stupid hope that my mom was separate from my dad's cruelty, that she might finally say something real if the house was quiet. So I drove down, parked in the driveway, and walked up the front steps, and for a second I could smell the old scent of that place, laundry detergent and wood polish and the ghost of dinners I ate while listening to my dad lecture me about effort. My mom opened the door, eyes red, and when I stepped inside, the warmth hit me along with the silence. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in spirit, like years of shrinking had finally made her shape permanent. She led me into the kitchen, and the table was the same table where I used to hand over rent money like a tenant. I sat down, and my hands stayed open on the wood, visible, like I was showing I had nothing to hide. Mom started talking fast, like she was afraid if she stopped, she would lose nerve. He is going to come after you, she said. He thinks you are disrespecting him. He thinks the money belongs to the family. I asked what she wanted. She swallowed and said, I want you to be safe. That nearly broke me because it sounded like love, but it was also too late, and late love has a complicated taste. Then I heard the garage door. My stomach tightened. My mom's eyes flicked toward the hallway. She had told me he was out. The door from the garage opened, and my dad walked in, carrying a bag like he had just gone for errands, casual and calm, and behind him was Trevor, grinning. It was a setup. Dad stopped when he saw me, and he did not look surprised. He looked satisfied, like the net had closed. So you did come, he said. My mom whispered I am sorry, and that was all she could offer. And I realized in that moment that she was not just a victim of him. She was also a gate that always opened when he knocked. Dad pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, like we were negotiating a business deal. Trevor leaned against the counter like a security guard. Dad said, we are going to settle this like men. I told him my attorney had already sent a notice. He laughed, a harsh sound. You think some lawyer scares me, he said. I made you who you are. You think you can just walk away with that money and leave your mother struggling. Trevor chimed in, and his voice had that mocking tone that made my skin crawl. Come on, little bro, he said. Half is fair. Dad carried you. Dad pushed you. Dad made you tough. Without him, you would still be scrubbing toilets. There it was again. Toilets. The thing they loved to reduce me to because it kept them feeling taller. My dad slid a folder across the table. He had papers inside. Printed. Organized. Like he had done homework. He said he had kept records. He said he had proof I owed him. He said he had spoken to someone who told him parents can claim certain things if a child became successful because of their support. It was nonsense. But he believed it. Or he wanted me to believe it. He leaned forward and said, if you do not give us half, I will make your life miserable. I will tell everyone you abandoned your mother. I will come to your work. I will embarrass you. My heart pounded, and for a second everything felt like it used to, like I was trapped in this kitchen under his gravity. Then I remembered what Miles said. Build a fence. Do not flinch. I took a slow breath and said, Dad, I am recording this conversation. Trevor's grin slipped. My dad's eyes narrowed. You would not, he said. I set my phone on the table, screen up, clearly showing the recording timer running, and I kept my voice steady. I would, I said, because you do not get to threaten me and call it parenting. My mom made a small sound like she wanted to disappear. Dad's face went red. He stood up so fast his chair scraped, and he slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked through the kitchen like a gunshot. You ungrateful little bastard, he shouted. Trevor pushed off the counter, stepping closer, shoulders squared, and for a second I thought he might actually swing. Trevor had always been the kind of guy who used his body when words did not work. Everything in me went alert, but I did not stand. I did not back up. I stayed seated and looked at him like I was done being afraid. I said one more word, calm, and it felt like cutting a wire. No. Dad leaned over me, close enough I could smell his breath, and he hissed that he would ruin me, that he would drag me back down where I belonged. And that was the moment the kid in me finally died. Not in a sad way, in a freeing way, because I realized he could not drag me anywhere I did not walk. I said Grace's name out loud, and I told him my attorney had every message, every threat, every demand, and if he kept going, the next conversation would be with a judge, and I would not be asking for anything, I would be asking for protection. Trevor scoffed, but his eyes flicked to my phone again, and I could see him calculating. Dad's hand tightened into a fist, and for a second I thought he would hit me. My mom whispered, Alan, please, and her voice was thin, and Dad froze not because of her, but because of the phone. He stepped back, breathing hard, and he said, fine. He said, you want to be that kind of son? Then be that kind of son. He said, do not come crying when you are alone. I stood up then, slow, keeping my hands visible, and I looked at my mom. She could not meet my eyes. She looked at the sink, the same sink she hid behind when I was 15, washing plates that were already clean. I told her I loved her, and I meant it in the complicated way you love someone who failed you but still gave you life. I told her I was done being used. I told her if she ever wanted a relationship with me, it would be on my terms, not his. Then I walked out of that house. Behind me, my dad shouted something I will not repeat because it was ugly and it does not deserve air, and Trevor laughed like he always did. But the laugh sounded thin now, like a performance for an audience that was shrinking. I got in my car, sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, and I did not cry. I did not shake. I just breathed, and I realized my body felt lighter than it had in years. Act 5, the resolution finale, Part 5, worthy resolution plus aftertaste reflection. The weeks after that were quieter, but it was the kind of quiet that has teeth, because silence after conflict is when people either learn or plot. My dad tried a few things. He called my workplace, which did not work because my company has security and because I had already warned them. He emailed me from an old account with a subject line that tried to sound reasonable, but inside it was the same demand dressed in polite words. Grace responded once, firmly, and after that she stopped feeding the fire. Trevor tried a different approach. He sent a message that sounded almost friendly, like he thought he could charm his way back into position. Hey man, he wrote, no hard feelings, Dad is just stressed. Let us talk like brothers. I stared at it for a long time, and what surprised me was not anger, but sadness, because Trevor could not even apologize without turning it into a negotiation. I did not respond. My mom texted me late one night, and it was the first message she had sent that felt like it came from her, not from the family machine. I should have protected you, she wrote. I did not. I am sorry. I read it 3 times. I wanted it to heal everything. It did not. But it was something. I texted back that I appreciated it, and I told her I hoped she was safe. I did not offer money. I did not offer rescue. I offered a boundary with a small door in it, and whether she walked through was on her. Here is the part people always want, the satisfying victory lap where I rub it in their faces and everyone claps. It did not happen like that. Real life does not hand you neat endings. What happened instead was quieter and somehow harder. I went back to my normal routine. Airports, hotels, client sites. I built my company bigger. I hired people. I took care of my team. I made sure nobody who worked for me ever felt the way my dad made me feel, like their worth was measured by what they could hand over. One Tuesday in late February, I was in a hotel in Phoenix for a meeting, lying on a bed that felt too soft, staring at a ceiling that looked exactly like every other ceiling in every other city, and I realized the strangest thing. I was free, but I was still grieving. Not for my dad exactly. Not for Trevor. I was grieving for the idea of family I never really had, the one where a kid can come home and feel safe without paying rent, the one where a father protects instead of collects, the one where a brother is a brother, not a rival. I grieved it like you grieve a person because in a way it is a death. And then I thought about that moment at the wedding, the look on Trevor's face when he realized I was not the punchline anymore, and I felt something warm, not cruel, not petty, just solid. I did not win because I got a lucky ticket. I won because I did not hand them my future the way I handed my dad rent money at 15. The money helped, sure. It made the ground under my feet steady. But the real win was learning that no is a complete sentence, even when you are saying it to the people who trained you to never say it. I still do not know what happens next. Maybe my mom leaves him someday. Maybe she does not. Maybe Trevor keeps telling people I am selfish. Maybe my dad cools down and tries a new angle. What I do know is this. If I ever have a son, he will never pay rent to live in my house. He will never get a notice with 45 days printed on it like he is an inconvenience. He will never wonder if love is something you have to earn by shrinking. And if my family shows up again, smiling like nothing happened, asking for a piece of whatever life I have built, I will remember that kitchen table, the slammed hand, the threat, and the recording timer counting up, and I will choose the version of me that walked out. Because the moral dilemma is real, and it sits in my chest sometimes when the hotel room is quiet. Family is supposed to mean you do not leave people behind, but what do you do when the people who share your blood are the ones trying to drain you dry? I do not have a perfect answer, but I have a boundary, and I have peace, and I have a life that pays me even when I sleep, and for now that is enough. And if Trevor ever asks again whether I am still cleaning toilets for a living, I will tell him the truth. I clean up messes, yeah. I just stopped cleaning up theirs.